Hey, it's Mary from Still Dreaming Homestead, back to more of a normal time. So I'm going to read today's chapter in our book, Little House on the Prairie. Yesterday was about the wolf pack, if you remember, and that was quite a scary day and night. So let's go on to the next chapter, which is called Two Stout Doors. Let's see, here's the picture for today. Laura felt a soft warmth on her face and opened her eyes into morning sunshine. Mary was talking to Ma by the campfire. There were no wolves to be seen, only their tracks were thick around the house and stable. Pa came whistling up from the creek. He put his gun on its pegs and led Pet and Patty to the creek to drink as usual. He had followed the wolf tracks as far as he knew So far, he knew that they were far away now, following a herd of deer. The Mustangs shied from the wolves' tracks. The Mustangs are the horses, remember, and pricked their ears nervously, and Pet kept her colt close beside her. But they went willingly with Pa, who knew there was nothing to fear. Breakfast was ready. When Pa came back from the creek, they all sat by the fire and ate fried mush and prairie chicken hash. Pa said he would make a door that very day. He wanted more than a quilt between them and the wolves next time. I have no more nails, but I'll not keep waiting till I make a trip into Independence, he said. A man doesn't need nails to build a house or make a door. After breakfast, he hitched up Pet and Patty, and taking his axe, he went to get timber for the door. But that day, Mary minded the baby, and Laura watched Pa make the door. Mary watched, but Laura handed him his tools. With the saw, he sawed logs the right length for the door. He sawed shorter lengths for cross pieces. Then, with the axe, he split the logs into slabs and smoothed them nicely. He laid the long slabs together on the ground and placed the shorter slabs across them. Then, with the auger, remember that's like a drill, he bored the holes through the cross pieces into the long slabs. Into every hole he drove a wooden peg that fitted tightly. That made the door. It was a good oak door, strong and solid. For the hinges, he cut 3 long straps. One hinge was to be near the top of the door, one near the bottom, and one in the middle. Now, if you look at the doors in your house, you'll see that's still the way they do it. One near the top, one near the bottom, and one in the middle. For the he fastened them first to the door in this way. He laid a little piece of wood on the door, and he bored a hole through it into the door. Then he doubled one end of the strap around the little piece of wood, and with his knife cut round holes through the strap. He laid the little pieces of wood on the door again, and with the strap doubled around it, and all the holes making one hole. Then Laura gave him a peg and the hammer, and he drove the peg into the hole. The peg went through the strap and the little piece of wood, and through the strap again and into the door. That held the strap so it couldn't get loose. I told you a fellow doesn't need nails, Pa said. And here he is working and with Laura helping him. Let's see if I can get that where you can see it. Very good. Do you like to help your dad or mom? When he had fastened the 3 hinges to the door, he set the door in the doorway. It fitted. Then he pegged strips of wood to the old slabs on either side of the doorway to keep the door from swinging outward. He set the door in place again, and Laura stood against it to hold it there, while Pa fastened the hinges to the door frame. But before he did this, he made the latch on the door because, of course, there must be some way to keep the door shut. This was the way he made the latch. First he hewed, that means carved, a short, thick piece of oak. From one side of this, in the middle, he cut a wide, deep notch. He pegged this stick to the inside of the door, up and down near the edge. He put the notch side against the door so that the notch made a little slot. Then he hewed and whittled a little longer, smaller stick. This stick was small enough to slip easily through the slot. He slid one end of it through the slot and he pegged the other end of it to the door. But he did not peg it tightly. The peg was solid and firm in the door, but the hole in the stick was larger than the peg. The only thing that held the stick in the door was the slot. This stick was the latch. It turned easily on the peg, and its loose end moved up and down in the slot. And the loose end of it was long enough to go through the slot and across the crack between the doors of the wall and lie against the wall when the door was shut. When Pa and Laura had hung the door in the doorway, Pa marked the spot on the wall where the end of the latch came. Over that spot he pegged to the wall a stout piece of oak. This piece of oak was cut out at the top so that the latch would drop between it and the wall. Oak is a very strong wood. Now, Laura pushed the door shut, and while she pushed, she lifted the end of the latch as high as it would go into the slot. Then she let it fall in its place behind the stout piece of oak. That held the latch against the wall, and the up and down strip held the latch in its slot against the door. Nobody could break in without breaking the strong latch in two. But there must be a way to lift the latch from the outside. So Pa made the latch string. He cut it from a long strip of good leather. He tied one end to the latch between the peg and the slot. And the latch he bore, above the latch he bore a small hole through the door, and he pushed the end of the latch string through the hole. Laura stood outside, and when the end of the latch string came through the hole, she took hold of it and pulled. She could pull it hard enough to lift the latch and let herself in. The door was finished. It was strong and solid, made of thick oak with oak slabs across it, all pegged together with good stout pegs. The latch string was out. If you wanted to come in, you pulled the latch string. But if you were inside and wanted to keep anyone out, you pulled the latch string through its hole and nobody could get in. There was no doorknob on that door, and there was no keyhole and no key, but it was a good door. "I call that a good day's work," said Pa, "and I had a fine little helper." He hugged the top of Laura's head with his hand. Then he gathered up his tools and put them away whistling, and he went to take Pet and Patty from the picket lines to the water. The sun was setting, the breeze was cooler, and the supper cooking on the fire made the best supper smells that Laura had ever smelled. There was salt pork for supper. It was the last of the salt pork, so the next day Pa went hunting, but the day after that he and Laura made the barn door. It was exactly like the house door, except that it had no latch. Pet and Patty did not understand door latches and would not pull a latch string in at night. So instead of a latch, Pa made a hole through the door. He put a chain through the hole. At night he would pull an end of the chain through the crack between the logs in the stable wall, and he would padlock the two ends of the chain together. Then nobody could get into the stable. "Now we're all snug," Pa said. "When neighbors came into the country, it was best to lock up your horses at night, because where there are deer, there will be wolves, and where there are horses, there will be horse thieves." That night at supper, Pa said to Ma, "Now, Carolyn, as soon as we get Edward's house up, I'm going to build you a fireplace so you can do your cooking in the house out of the wind and storms. It seems like I never did see a place with so much sunshine, but I suppose it's bound to rain sometime. Yes, Charles, Ma said. Good weather never lasts forever on this earth. Well, that was a really good 2 days of working. And I'm glad he's going to go help Mr. Edwards. That's what he said he was going to do. It's important to be good at our word. If we say something, that's what we should do. So that also means we need to be careful what we say. If we're going to do it, we need to be careful with our words. Well, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. I want to say I love you, I really do. But more importantly, God loves you. So keep dreaming. Keep a story in your heart. Good night.